Bernie. Okay, everybody, welcome to our final book of Revelations. This is it. We're almost done. We can do this. We're going to go through 17 all the way to the end. And I'll give you three big kind of mile markers. First one, we're going to meet the whore of Babylon. Second one, we're going to see the destruction of Babylon. And then third one, we're going to see the new heaven. So those are the big three that we're going to see today. And you know, I think what you may notice is you have your Revelation lens on now. So you may be picking up rapture language all over the place. I encountered it on Facebook this morning in one of my groups. And they were just weaving rapture language in and out of this conversation. And it wasn't even about the end times. And I was like, wow. So keep those Revelation eyes open, okay? Okay, let me go ahead and get us from the start, and I'll go ahead and share my screens here. It's kind of cold today, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. My dogs are snoring very loud today, so just so you know, they're very sleepy. Okay, here's what we're doing. We're bringing it to a close. 17 all to the end. Okay, last week we covered the 7 bowls, the 7 plagues. And again, the bowls means it's finite. The 7, the plagues connecting us back to Exodus, imagery that would have made a lot of sense to John's Jewish audience. We saw Armageddon, saw it was kind of like an afterthought in a little passage. A lot of what we encountered last week was a lot of anti-Roman propaganda and thinly veiled takedowns of Rome. So this week, we're going to meet the whore of Babylon again. As we know, this is all building to the climactic destruction of Rome. And God is going to triumph. And we're going to basically find, you know, in some ways, John is going to wrap this up in a way that's going to be very compelling to John's audience. Okay. Now, there is a lot to read in this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading through that. I'm going to point out some big ones, okay? So let's start with Revelations 17, and this is the first time we're going to meet the whore of Babylon. Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. So he carried me away in the spirit of into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. And then it goes on to talk about how the woman was adorned with jewels, and on her head was written Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of earth's abomination. Quite the title, right? You know, hello, my name is Babylon the Great, mother of horrors and of earth's abomination. And that she was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus, right? So pretty shocking, you know, imagery, right? So we got to remember, John's writing this pastoral letter, and he is attempting to address the immediate problem of his readers. He is not writing a letter that is intended to be a puzzle for future readers. It's an immediate solution to his readers' problems. He is not writing about or thinking about people 2,000 years in the future who are and halfway around the world who are going to seek to understand this. It's just not, he's right here with his people, right? His people know the time, they know the context, and they know that he was writing for and about Rome, and that if he says that, he will be in big trouble. He can't do it. He just can't do it, right? So, so we're going to see him use a lot of creative imagery as we see Rome destroyed. And I've got a lot of images of the Whore of Babylon to come. And it's fair to say it's a very kind of misogynistic, right? That's, and not a male imagery that's chosen for this. It's the female wanton sexual image. And you'll see through the centuries how she has been depicted, and you'll see it become more and more sexualized as you kind of go through these. So again, she's riding in on the beast, and we've met the beast, right? The beast takes on lots of different visual images by the authors or by the artists. Okay, so now what we have in this one is basically the what's the right word? The leaders of the world getting in bed with the Whore of Babylon. That's basically what they're saying in here. Is that these people who have power and prestige in the world got into bed with Babylon, and that they joined in kind of the destruction that came from that. So the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. So I don't know how you can make it any more clearer about who this is, right? We're going to come back to this image. This is an important image I'm going to show you later too. As you move into the Renaissance period, you really see the sexualization of the Whore of Babylon. Okay. Now, so to say that the kings of the earth, they slept with her, that imagery means they courted her, that they had relationships with her, and most importantly, they prospered from that, right? So some of the imagery that they use, purple equals wealth, and it has for centuries. Scarlet, sign of sexual immortality. So John is basically in here saying that Rome is a cheap whore. Something that would absolutely get him killed if he came right out and said that, right? And Rome is nothing compared to God. And in the end, God will triumph. And that's what's about to happen. Okay. So after this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his splendor. And he called out with a mighty voice, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." And with Babylon falling, everyone who has basically gotten in bed with her is going to fall out, is going to fall as well. But then there's this other voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so that you do not take part in her sins, so that you do not share in her plagues." So there's kind of like this last call. Look, things are going down. Get out now, right? And all throughout Revelations, John's been saying, you've got to be in right relationship with God. You got to have right behavior. He's calling the Jesus followers back to Jesus's message. And he's saying, look, before this goes down, you have got to turn back to God. So the giant angel shows up and issues this decree. Right? And the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, "Alas, alas, the great city, Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come." And what is in here is all of the people and entities who prospered. Everybody who made money out of this corrupt, oppressive system is going down with them. That's what John's saying. It's not just Rome going down, it's everybody who basically sold their soul and made money off of this at the expense of people like John and his followers. So it's not just Rome, it's everybody who's made money and prospered after it. And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, again crying out, "Alas, alas, the great city where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. for in 1 hour she has been laid waste. With such violence, Babylon, the great city, will be thrown down and will be found no more. Okay, so 18 opens, right, with the great whore falling to ruin. And anybody who got in bed with her, anybody who consorted with her is going down too, right? And John's saying basically she's just a heap of trash. He's got nothing nice to say, and he's got all these clever ways of dissing her. And because what Rome has done has been so awful, there is no limit on the punishment that is to come. I mean, that like the anger that has built up and the desire for revenge in John and John's audience is so big, and we're going to come back to this, so big that John is creating imagery that said, basically, there will be no end to Rome's punishment, right? So much pain has caused this. And Rome is not going to be expecting this. Rome thought it was invincible. There's just going to be shock from Rome and all of those who consorted with her when they realized they have no future. Okay, so in 18, they list all these luxuries, right? That they're all the things that only the wealthiest could afford. John and John's audience could not afford them, right? So the whole point of chapter 8 is basically to give voice to the anger and rage of the people that John is writing to. They have just been horrifically oppressed. They have been economically oppressed. Their lifestyles have been oppressed. Their family structures, everything about them and their reality has been under the boot of Rome. And it has created such intense anger that the only response is that God is going to destroy them all. So, right? God is going to stand up for them, the oppressed, and God's going to destroy Rome, right? This probably brought great comfort for John's audience. I mean, can you imagine, sitting in, John, one of John's 7 churches and hearing this as part of the liturgy and read that it doesn't matter how awful my life is when I walk out that door. It's all going to be okay in the end because God's going to bring Rome down and all of those systems that are tied to it, right? It's a good riddance passage to Rome, okay? Now we are moving towards this triumphal ending following the collapse of Rome, right? And a vision of what will happen when Rome collapses. So the final chapters are going to focus on the destruction of Rome and the aftermath, and then celebrating the new Jerusalem that's going to replace that filthy, corrupt Rome. In the end, it's all about God. Earthly wealth and power fail, God reigns. That's how John's going to bring it all to a conclusion. And John doesn't just end it with Rome goes down. John's going to bring back what will rise. Okay. So chapter 19, we have moving into the destruction of Israel. Let me go here. So this is John talking about how an angel said to him, "Write this. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And he said to me, "These are true words of God." Then I saw heaven open, and there was a white horse, and its rider is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. And the armies of heaven, wearing fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. And from his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of the God Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh, he has a name inscribed, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So you could imagine, right? If you strip away all of the context that you all have been learning about, all of the history, take it all away. Forget about the fact that, this is a 2000-old letter, and just look at this passage completely out of context. I'd probably say, yeah, that looks like the end times too, right? And again, John's writing, we can't do that. We got to put the context around it. And when we do, we see that John's writing a letter to his people, about his people, and the destruction of their enemy. Okay? So Rome is defeated, and there is a lot of rejoicing. And some of you who took my hell class know that imagery in Judaism of what hell is in Judaism, that reference to the dump outside of Jerusalem and the smoke fires that would come up. That's what hell was, right? There was this ancient practice that when your enemy was defeated, you would feast among the dead and dying, right? And basically, John's saying they got what they deserved. They absolutely got what they deserved. And it's not done. They are destroyed, but got to make sure they're locked up. So in Revelations 20, you see the beast thrown down into this ancient pit and bound and locked in there, and for 1,000 years. And then this is kind of interesting. When the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison. We're going to kind of talk about that use of the word Satan. And will come out to deceive the nations. And also another book was opened, the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their works as recorded in the books. And the sea gave up the dead that were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them, and all were judged according to what they had done. And again, a lot of this image, for those of you who took the hell class, should be pretty familiar. This is imagery that ties to the Judaism view of hell. Okay, you got the beast being bound. God's a big white guy here with a throne and wings bringing the beast down. Chapters 20 and 20, all the way up to 22 are really jumbled. And what you read in these 3 chapters, John repeats things. Several things are out of order. Some Bibles actually edit this and reorder the chapters. John very clearly needed an editor here. So remember in this one, when anytime you hear Satan, it doesn't mean, the little red guy with the horn. It means an accuser, somebody who opposes God, right? And what John's saying is that this one is no longer a threat and will kept away for a long time, but eventually there may be one that will come back, right? And then he's saying that some who have died are going to be resurrected for their faith. And at the end of this, death is destroyed. Death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. And this is the second death, the lake of fire. And anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. So at the very end, not only is Rome destroyed, but death is destroyed. A lot of metaphorical images. None of this is literal. None of it's literal. Okay, final milestone, the New Jerusalem. Rome has been destroyed. John is going to now create the answer to what will come. And what will come is a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. Right? So anyone who's thinking Revelations is the answer to how it all ends because we're going to be sucked up to God, right? Like this one says you're not reading it right here, because it doesn't end in the sky. It ends on earth. The whole point is that God dwells on earth, right? This is a really, really critical one that I it just baffles me why this one's so hard to get. See, I am making all things new. Also, he said, write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. Then he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. There is no heaven in the sky. Heaven comes to earth. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues came and said to me, come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And in the spirit, he carried me away to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It has the glory of God and radiance like a jewel. And then he goes on to describe the temple. Now, all of you who read those final chapters in Exodus should be going, oh my gosh, I swear I've read this before, right? Because this is kind of how Exodus ends, right? Because John's audience is Jewish, right? So this would have made sense. They're creating the new temple. I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God, the Almighty, and the Lamb. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Its gates will never be shut by day. Okay. A lot of the final chapter of Revelation, it's often read at funerals because it has a really powerful message of God dwelling with humankind, God in our midst. And death will be no more. God will be accompanying us and taking care of our needs. And John is presenting this kind of juxtaposition of how Rome treated us, and now how the bride of the Lamb, the church, is going to care for us, right? And this city is magnificent. Those measurements equal a perfect square, which is beautiful imagery for John's audience. It is lavish beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And it's very inclusive. The gates are never going to be shut. Anyone can enter at any time as long as they are righteous. Okay. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. So you can imagine for a desert people, what it would be like to have the river of life flowing through the center of the city and have access to clean, healthy, fresh water. It's a beautiful thing. I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. And when I heard and saw them, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who showed that to me. I warn everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book, if anyone adds to them. So John's going to threaten future editors here. That's what he's doing. If anyone adds to the words of this book, God will add to that person the plagues described in this book. If anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away that person's share in the tree of life and in the holy city, which are described in this book. So John is flat out threatening anybody who is going to attempt to edit his letter. I mean, you cannot get more bullying than here, right? Okay. So again, the river to a desert people, that was life and bounty. It made it the most perfect setting, having water abundant. This I am coming soon passage here. It almost does look like it's coming from Jesus, but it's not clear. who it is. And so it's not really, it's a very poorly written one. You can't really see who's coming. And so it has been a source of controversy for a long time, a long time. Best guess is it's meant to encourage those who are on the front lines struggling, saying, hang in there just a little longer, help is coming, right? And then John's going to close it by basically saying he saw this vision. So he is again saying, here's my street credibility. Here's why you have to believe me on this, because I had this vision. So he's going to open with that, and he's going to close with that. And then he's going to say, don't mess with my letter. Okay. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing right there before I send you out with our final question for reflection. That's it. That's how we're going to end it. We meet the whore of Babylon. Rome is destroyed. The new Jerusalem is created. Thoughts, questions, reactions to any of that? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Marci, you said you were going to go back to that painting.
Oh, yeah. Hold
There was
on.
one that you were going to go back to.
Yeah, I'm going to get to it in just a second.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any questions, thoughts? We're okay. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, this numerous times when I was reading through this, I would pause at something and really want to ask about that. Now, why did they say that? Now, why did they say this? But I mean, it would take forever.
It would. And I think keep in mind, it's very much written just like all the other apocalyptic literature. Lots of imagery, lots of creative imagery, lots of imagery that would have made sense to that audience. Very dualistic, good, bad, evil, good, righteous, non-righteous. There's no middle ground. You're one or the other. And a lot of that imagery, we may never know what it means, but it meant something to that audience at that point in time.
Well, I would like to, there's one that pops to mind. So Satan is going to be bound for 1,000 years, which is a very long time. But then he has to be let go.
Yeah.
Why does he have to be let go?
So remember, Satan is anybody who opposes God, right? So just kind of even take the word Satan out and think of anybody who opposes God. So what John's saying is this kind of triumph isn't going to last forever, because ultimately somebody else, there's going to be a new Babylon, is going to rise up, and somebody else is going to oppose God. But in the end, God's always going to win.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Diane.
Reading it with the context of what it's all about, I have now a hard time seeing how it gets interpreted to this rapture and these chosen people. I really do. And the other thing is, the best part for me was John's ending, where he emphasizes the new earth.
Yeah.
That it's, because that echoes Jesus's message of the kingdom of God on earth, of doing these things. This is what it is. So I now have a lot of respect for John, just because he gave us that imagery and that idea. Yeah, that idea that there's heaven, there's God, but it's on earth.
Yeah. Now a lot of rapture thinkers will argue that, and you can hear this in the theology of evangelical music stations. This is our temporary home. This is our temporary home, right? And that thinking really does cut off the knees of anything related to saving our planet, right?
Oh my
home, right? But here we have like John, the book of Revelations, the one there's source document pulling from, saying it's all ending here. Like this is it. This is so it's you're right. The more you kind of understand the letter and the context, it's really hard to make sense of that.
John should have added, or misinterprets this. Should have just added that line.
And then you get the 7 bowls and the 7 plagues.
Yeah, just that one little phrase might have helped us out here.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let me go back.
Marci,
Oh, go ahead, Marilyn.
well, I just think it's interesting that, you know, they condemn the extravagance of Rome and then they replace it with an extravagant heaven, you know, it's like, instead of returning to simplicity and a simple life, it's all this extravagance. It
Yeah.
just seems weird to me that they
Yeah,
replaced it with what they're destroying.
yeah. The difference being, I think, that river going through the center. I mean, that is a beautiful image of like equitable access to clean water. I mean, that's a powerful image on that one. I could run with that one for days. I think both and Marilee. Okay, let me go back and share. I want to go back to a couple other things. Okay, so who's been the horror of Babylon over time? At the time John wrote it, it was absolutely Rome. At the time, like 100 years after this got into the canon, at the time when Christianity became the official religion of the empire, the Babylon horror became the Christian enemies. It became pagans. It became Jews, and it became anybody who was considered a heretic, right? So this imagery and that naming has been used by others. In the Reformation, Martin Luther tossed around the horror of Babylon all the time for the Catholic Church. This is one of his quotes. So there you see the only woodcuts in the New Testament. You see the horror of Babylon wearing a papal crown. You see the 7-headed beast wearing a papal crown. So this is Luther. And a lot of the Reformation leaders use that imagery. So Lindsay, to your point, this picture that I showed you earlier, this is
There's the crown.
from Luther's Bible.
Ah,
Yeah, that's from Luther's Bible. And
Yeah.
that's the crown, that's the papal crown on there. Yeah. So over this,
Interesting, they made the Pope a woman.
well, yeah, but that was the ultimate slam, Marilee. The Pope was a whore. So yeah, this is Luther's Bible. So, okay, a couple of questions I just want to put out there. Did John really have a vision? Maybe, probably not. The way this is written, it's written where he's using very complex references to scripture and to historical events make that probably doubtful, right? He's using the kind of trope of a vision to both lend authority and to make it a really compelling letter. Okay. Did John expect God to intervene soon? And if so, was he mistaken? Yes and yes. John probably expected God to intervene directly and dramatically, immediately on behalf of the church, that they were anticipating Rome to fall, that Jesus would come back, that this was all going to come to a conclusion very quickly. Okay. What should we make of the violent and vengeful character of John's vision? Because it is violent and it is vengeful. It was shaped by the anger, anxiety, and frustration that he was facing within and for his community. He is giving voice to the anger and the anxiety and the frustration, not only of himself, but also of the community. And it really challenges us to think about our own feelings of frustration and anger and our own capacity for cruelty, because there's an enormous amount of cruelty at the end that what happens here, right? It is not intended to be read as an authorization to inflict pain on others or to pray for God to inflict it. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And this is the question for reflection I want to send you out in. What is the difference between Christian in ancient times calling for revenge on Rome and groups today calling for revenge on the West because of the persecution they perceive we have enacted on them? Okay, what's the difference? But what's the similarities too? Okay.
Mm.
So I'm going to send you out for just a few minutes. Well, maybe about 7 minutes. And I'm going to send you out for 7 minutes. Does anybody need me to read the question again?
Yeah, one more time. It's a doozy.
It is a doozy. It is a doozy. What is the difference between those Christians that we've been reading about in ancient time calling for revenge, thirsting for revenge on Rome, and groups today that are calling for revenge on the West and the US because of the persecution they perceive we have enacted on them? What's the difference, if any? Okay, you get about 8 minutes, and I'll see you back here in a little bit. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, what'd you come up with? That's a hard one.
Change.
Well, on the kind of the sad end of the spectrum, we came up with the fact that really things haven't changed much, but kind of on the comic end of the spectrum, when we just came out of our breakout rooms, we were talking about how interesting it would be to have a movie marathon weekend about movies that were based on revelations, like, you know, The Rapture and The Exorcist. And if you know the background, those movies aren't really that scary anymore. They're just kind of silly, and, you know, Linda Blair with her head spinning around. And
Yeah.
so, but it'd be interesting to, even if we didn't have a movie marathon weekend, it'd be interesting to brainstorm a list of the movies. And even what was that show, The X-Files, which was a lot about
Oh, yeah.
science fiction, but it was also had a lot of biblical storylines.
I never.
Um,
I never
So-
watched.
I just thought of another movie, Lindsay. Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, see,
Oh, there's one.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, what else? What did the other group come up with?
Well, we had a hard time with it because there's persecution going on in every single country, West and East, right?
Forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
everywhere.
You know, I brought up just, you know, looking at the United States from the time the Pilgrims got here, started persecuting the Native Americans and killing them, and they're coming here for religious freedom, right? You know, probably getting away from that papal whore. And and yet we, you know, we started persecuting any religion that wasn't Puritan. So and it's going on all through our history. It's continuing to happen. And you know, I don't know, that's kind of where that's what we talked about, is the persecution that's going on and on and on, because we cannot open our minds to the thing about John. He talked about God. He didn't talk too much about Jesus. Okay. So he was just talking about God, and every religion has a God.
Well, one thing I was thinking of is the last passage we read talks about everybody's welcome if you're righteous. And it seems to me that last line is exactly what has caused all the religious intolerance ever since, is who defines what is right and who is righteous, you know? And that, you know, like all the people that fled here for religious freedom were very quick to set up colonies that included people who believed as they did, but excluded people who didn't believe as they did, you know?
Okay, so let me see if I can make sense of this. If we just kind of step back, because I think the key too as well, Marilee, is at the end, but I view it as a radically inclusive statement because righteousness really means being in right relationship with God. And right relationship with God means being on the way. It means serving in the world, loving unconditionally, gracious and lavish healing. That's what it means to be in right relationship. It's to be living out God's dream so that everybody can flourish. That's what it means to be right in relationship. So then if you look at that from that sense of what it means to be in right relationship with God, it's a beautiful invitation. It's a beautiful invitation to say the gates are open. There's going to be abundance and beauty if we can all find a way to get to this place in our hearts where we can reach out from a place of right relationship with God and love unconditionally and forgive radically and welcome and, all of those things that go along with being on the way, which isn't unique to Christianity. It's a way that I think Christians can think about how we can be in right relationship with God. So that's how I think about this. I think it ends on just a beautiful note of inclusivity and invitation into right relationship with God. But we have to really be willing to let go of right relationship and what that means. It means that our hearts are aligned with God, our souls, our ambitions, our dreams. We're living out God's dreams. Then we're in right relationship with God, and the world heals. And we have heaven on earth, and we have abundance, and we have peace. So, and I also go back to every time we come up with the really, really, really hard stuff, and we've dealt with a lot of it in here, which is I cannot bring peace to the world. I cannot heal the call for vengeance. What can I do in my everyday relationships to be in right relationship with God and the world around me? So, and I think that invitation is all there at the end of John. So that's what I find.
That's a very nice way to look at it.
Yeah.
We just do what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
We know what to do. We've been told, we've been shown. We've been shown.
Favorite phrase of mine is, if there's more love in my life, there's more love in the world. And just to sit and think about that,
Yep. I absolutely believe that, Rad. I believe that down to my molecular DNA. I do believe it. We have the ability to heal the world in the manner in which we love in our families and in our communities. And that's a powerful witness and statement. So, okay, I'm going to show you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen because I want you to see the last slide, which is what's next. So what's next is in the fall, because I won't be back until the third week in October, but October Pub Theology I'll be back for. So Becky is going to lead a class called Mana and Mercy. And there'll be a book that goes with it. And it covers all of the major themes of the whole Bible in 16 chapters. And
Wow.
pretty creative way to look at it. It's really kind of stepping back and looking at the Bible in kind of categories and themes. So that's going to start up September 3rd. It will go all the way up until December 17th, the same time, all on Zoom. They'll all be recorded, so you'll all have access to them on the YouTube channel. Because we're going to buy the books for everybody, over the summer, you'll see an invitation on the MailChimps and in the newsletter to register for the class, and then we'll buy the books for everybody. So that'll end in December, and then in January, we're going deep into the Gospel of John. I have put it off long enough. So a lot of my study over the next couple of months will be preparing for that one, which I think will be very fun. Biggest gospel. It's the biggest gospel. I think it's the most misunderstood gospel. And we're going to see if we can redeem John. So, and there's stuff in there that we have not touched. There's so much new material in there.
Mhm.
You're going to be absolutely gobstopped when you see how much is in there that we haven't touched in any other class.
I've never read that gospel.
Should we be in spirit with you, Marci, and read it this summer?
If you want to start taking a stab at it, it is hard for me to read. Like Mark is easy to read, right? John is not easy to read. And part of the reason John is so hard to read is because of who he's writing to and why he's writing it. So understanding the context is going to be really, really critical for John, because this is the highest Christology we're going to see. Like, this is not the Jesus that's going to get mad because he has to wait in the line. This is the Christ, and it's everywhere in John. So we're going to have to kind of understand why John does that.
So this isn't the wine drinking Jesus. This is the
No, but this his first miracle is the one his mom makes him do.
okay. In John? That's in John?
His first
Okay.
act of ministry is because his mom makes him do it. It's the wine at the wedding.
Hmm.
Nearer to Cana.
Very first act of ministry. And his mom makes him do it. So there's kind of gems in there like that we're gonna find.
My mother made me do it.
My mother made me do it.
Mama
That's what they
said,
all say.
Mama said.
Revelation was no walk in the park to read, so that
That's true. If you got your revelations,
I
John,
think we can get through John.
Gold star, gold star.
yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So, and I like the format of kind of diving into the context first, understanding all that, and then taking a little bit at a time, and then kind of having that time for you all to step away in small groups and then come back. So that's the format that I'm going to move forward with. If you need something different, please email me. If you have any creative ideas on what you would like to see in terms of how these hours go. Okay. Okay, everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Mark.
I'm gonna
Thank
get great
you.
sabbatical.
Safe
Yeah.
trip, Marcy.